I woke to a sinking feeling. It wasn't a symptom of nerves or any kind of sickness, but a literal sinking feeling at my core, my center of gravity. I lay there flat against a sterile cot, without the assistance of restraints still binding me to the waist and ankles. I opened my eyes to the harsh brightness of functioning lights, and I listened for the grinding clicks and clanks of mechanical failure, only to hear a serene hum of the environmental stabilizer. Sometime in my unconscious state, the gap between delusion and lucidity, that hopeless nightmare had dissolved into normality once more. Did I dream? Had I dreamt within a dream? Or was there a dream at all? When I came around and examined myself, the concept of pain became surreal, as I had evidently suffered a slashed foot and compound fracture without so much as a scratch to speak for them. Or had I? I had no way of knowing for sure. Somehow I had wandered my way to the infirmary, strapped myself down, and the empty anesthetic syringe still sat to the right of my unbroken ankle. Had I wandered in my sleep? Had I imagined the whole thing? Still, the illness clung to my bones like ice. My fever had evidently broken, or may have never occurred in the first place. And yet, I could still hardly see straight and felt like I hadn't eaten a solid meal in weeks. In spite of all this, all the confusion and disembodiment, the calendar readout on the far wall attested to a veil of lies. All of the agony and unrest, the days upon days of hunger, illness, and hallucinations, all of it had occurred in less than 12 hours from the time I had heard my son's voice over the comlink. Time had, once again, eluded my grasp. That sight may have been the first time the question had crossed my mind. With no one else around, no other perspective to contrast my own, was there any real line dividing hallucination from reality? If my experience was my own, and only my own, did it truly matter? That was the question that fueled my tenacity for survival during my days of recovery. Each moment of each day, that same question weighed on my mind. Each moment spent considering that question became another moment of control, another moment of strength, and the question itself became more significant than any conclusion I could have drawn. Though that isn't to say I never sought an answer. Eventually, the answer did come to me. My paranoia and delirium had entirely dissipated, and I had arrived at a threshold. That threshold lay in the realization that if my reality was my own, then so too was my contentment with that reality. It was not freedom from delusion that concerned me nearly as much as the balance in my ability to live with myself. With time and meditation, the experience faded into an unpleasant dream, and my health slowly returned. Fortunately, my training back home proved elemental to my recovery. When you're pushing through the stress and endurance tests, spending hours upon hours in zero gravity, it's more about acclimation than building strength. Your body learns to accept weightlessness and fight through the sickness. Your sense of direction learns to cope without the concepts of north or south, up or down. More to the point, your body learns to heal in an artificial environment and false gravity of a centrifuge. Those first few bites of warm food hit a suffering stomach in silent contentment. Those first few tired steps on the treadmill moved me forward with sound mind and clear direction. Those first few minutes of restful sleep brought only comforting darkness, uninterrupted with dreams or nightmares. The days flowed calmly, without obsession, and I slowly settled back into sanity. The physician could tell that it wasn't my first journey into deep space. She said that sickness was no indicator of experience. It happens to everyone. She was more of the opinion that recovery time spoke more clearly for someone's proverbial sea legs. She hardly had to attend to me at all, and her visits were short and sweet. Truth be told, for the most part, I nursed myself back to health without her assistance. As always, James was the first to greet me in my first few waking moments. After I was released, I had so much as made my way to the lockers before the kid came jogging up to my side like a neglected puppy, tail wagging and eyes agleam. Now Nothing could have told me how close we were to landing quite like his spark of enthusiasm.
Glad to see you on your feet, sir.
He exclaimed with a clap on my shoulder.
Lots of us were starting to worry we had to leave you behind.
Don't count me out just yet, kid, I told him. I lived my life back on Earth just like everyone here. I wouldn't miss this party for the world. Apparently, I had recovered just in time as the recon drones had just finished making their rounds and were about to begin preparations for the first expedition. Captain Beck had made do with the interim helmsman. He'd only need to keep the ship in high orbit long enough to receive accurate feedback from the recon session, a job he could surely handle with minimal supervision. Nevertheless, the crew were elated when I relieved him of his station. Just one less worry. In the coming days, they'd be needing a more experienced hand to guide the descent into low orbit, and not long after, landing. The crew were awaiting orders before I even took the helm, and the captain was more than ready to convey them. At last, we reached the end of the transit, and our kind would take their first steps on the surface of what would hopefully become our new home.